The snow just started. A little bit left on the ground. All right, going in the garage where all the food is. See how the temperatures are in here. Oh, and I gotta put water in. Everything's looking good. I need to put water in the mushrooms. We need to keep them moist. You can see they're producing, but because it's cold, it's important to keep them moist. So with your emergency preparedness, make sure to keep water because all the hoses are frozen. I can't get water out of the outside for the gardens. Thankfully, they don't use much water. It's when you gotta water a real garden that becomes a problem. But I've got some backup water here. All right, guys, we're gonna have a real-time coffee chat without coffee. I'm actually drinking Dandy Blend right now for liver cleansing. But I wanted to give you a real-time update, so I'm gonna film this and get it up today. I had another video for you guys. We got John's homes in place. Ian's up there working on them. So grateful. It is so cold. I was up there for a couple of hours, standing on the frozen ground as we got these homes set. And it actually made me sick. Like I could not regulate my body temperature the rest of the day. It is just really brutally cold, especially in the mountains with higher elevations and the ground being frozen, all the things. So it's dangerous for those who are in the elements. It is not fun. There's the other situations, the family that the 77-year-old man, he's in a shed. The two boys are in sheds. The mom, we got a camper out to them through another organization, and I just heard there's propane problems and extension problems. So it's not, it's difficult situations because you're running extension cords to get heat into buildings when it's so cold. This garage, I'm running a mini HVAC system. It's running at 70 degrees and it's freezing cold in here because these buildings just aren't homes, right? They're just not. Even our home is more like off-grid home. And so they're hard to keep warm, especially without fire. So it's a difficult time for people. I just wanted to hop in here and kind of address some of the things that you might be hearing that are going on in the area. So what happened is, first off, we're building a new home. We've got John's house set, and I'm going to do an interview with him and let him share his story. He's just a great guy. It's like one of those people when you meet him, you feel like you've known him for years. And I want you to hear his story because the person who purchased that house is, I don't fault them for purchasing it at a tax loan. That's just the way it works. You don't pay your taxes, it's going to get sold, and he bought it, right? That's just how it works. But his behavior is not acceptable. And the things that have happened since are not acceptable. One of the main issues, the water, which he didn't know, the house is essentially useless because the water and the septic are controlled and come off the lot that John still owns. And so when we leave, he is coming in behind us, trying to pressure him to allow him access to those things, and trying to take advantage of somebody who, even though he's super smart, nicest guy ever, he still has a brain disability, and there is no reason that man should not be talking to him about anything without some sort of advocate there after the way he treated him. And again, I don't fault him for buying the house. I fault him for the way he treated a human being. When you guys see those videos, I don't know if you can tell, we're at the very top of a mountain. When he goes to the store, he has to walk 5 miles to get to a small general store to get like basic things. 5 miles. You don't leave someone up in the middle of a snowstorm. You don't leave them up there if you don't know if they have somewhere to go. Ask them if they need a ride. Allow them to take a few boxes of their stuff. Make sure that they're safe. Like it's okay if you bought the house and they need to leave. Totally understand that. It is not okay to do what they did. And I'll talk about that in another story. We're going to make a video on that and we'll dive deeper into that subject. So, but he's secure. House looks amazing. We're going to get the furniture up there next week. Can't wait to show you guys. We are building on another tiny home for a single mom and a toddler. And so this is where FEMA and their shadiness has done some things. So there is a neighborhood and it was rezoned. So we thought we were going to be able to put the tiny house over there and she was going to pay rent to the owner of that land. We have since found out that's not possible because they rezoned, and now anything new that gets built there. So the ones that were already there, they aren't having to raise them if they don't go through FEMA to fix them. Baptist on Mission is doing a lot of that work. The Housing Coalition fixed one. So those don't have to be lifted because they're not going through the FEMA chains. I don't know about insurance. I know one friend over there said if she takes the FEMA money, then she has to pay this really high insurance bill. I don't know if she's going to have to pay that regardless because of the zoning. So not clear on that. But anything new has to be 7 feet high. 7 feet high is ridiculous. These houses, yes, they're on the river, but they are not near the river. This was a 1,000-year flood, and many of us have thoughts on where it came from to begin with. It's not a normal flood zone. It's not a 100-year flood zone. 7 feet high just makes it unlivable land. So now these lots are going to sit there, and all those people that lived there now have to find somewhere else. So her home, the new tiny home, is going to be an off-grid situation, which is what we're looking at now. Is anything moving forward, it's probably going to be off-grid situation because it's too expensive and there's not options with water and sewer, especially in, a budget. We can build these tiny houses pretty affordably. We can make them easy to move. We can make them so beautiful and functional inside and comfortable and warm. But we can't afford to build out septic tanks and run power lines and get zoning things and all the things to make that possible. So it just leaves a lot of people in a really bad situation. And so I was listening to some numbers, and FEMA had originally said by Thanksgiving they were going to put in 100 temporary homes for people. They put in, it was either 36 or 63. And I'm sorry, I can be super dyslexic. It's one of those. I think it's 36. I don't know. Either way, they didn't put in 100. They were supposed to put in 500 this year, like in 2025 or the next month or two. None of those are going in because they won't put them in if there's no sewer, water, and power. And we don't have any land with sewer, water, and power that's available for any of these people. So they've done barely anything to help with temporary housing. Meanwhile, you guys helping on the other end of this, all the many, there's so many different people like me, and some that are much, much larger, obviously. My operation's very, very small. There's all sorts of organizations out doing temporary housing. Lowe's did a big push with those tiny houses. So I think 60 came out at Christmas. There's tons of, thousands and thousands of temporary housing with sheds, tiny homes, campers, going out, tents that are actually the weatherproof ones that you can put a fire stove in, like thousands. They're everywhere. There's so many that have gone out. And that's from the people in the private sector. Okay. And so I want to talk about this because it relates to what's happening in California. The other thing with FEMA, and this is one you're probably hearing all over the internet, and I am friends with some people closely involved in this situation. So the hotel vouchers ran out yesterday, and FEMA originally said anyone who doesn't have any place to go, any temporary housing, it's fine, they can stay. If they have temporary housing or a temporary situation and FEMA knew about that, then their voucher was not going to extend and they needed to move into that structure. So this week has been a push to get those people who do have now a camper or a tiny house or a shed home or something that is ready for them, to get them in there and get them secure and make sure everything is working right before this extreme cold. We're in the extreme cold right now. This garage is absolutely freezing with the heat running at 70. It's not possible to keep it warm. It's just super, super cold. My eggs in my chicken coop froze within like 2 hours. And I know for some of you guys in more northern climates, it's even way, way colder. But for us, it's cold here. So that was the thing this week, was like, if you are going into a temporary housing, we need to do that now and get you secure. So people were helping others to do that. And if you're not, FEMA was saying they were going to extend the vouchers. What happened is they extended them one day. And then the next day, they ghosted everybody. So as of yesterday and the last few days, it's the people involved in this. I'm not personally involved in this. I know the people who are. And so I'm just kind of relaying what I've heard from what they're sharing. So they basically, FEMA ghosted everybody and wasn't returning calls and saying what was happening. So you've got hotels with all these people in them, and the hotels are saying there's no way to cover the cost tomorrow. So there's an organization called Mercury One, and they went and paid for these people in this hotel to extend their stay for 3 weeks, which is amazing. So that hotel is secure. There's other ones going on. There's lots of other people out there in this situation. But that's been what's happening, is that they said they were going to extend it. They extended it for a day. They said they were going, and they is FEMA. FEMA said they were going to extend it indefinitely if it was needed. And I did hear this morning, I was watching one reel from, again, these are people I know personally, or through another friend. So what they're sharing is the truth. And I'm not going to share, there's a lot of not truth out there, okay? There's a lot of people just trying to profit on this situation in our area, so be careful of them. But the ones that are legit and the information they're sharing, this is real information. So they were just saying, like there weren't the funds, or it wasn't approved. So there's all this stuff where there's either, if there is communication, it's we haven't been able to get it approved situation, or there's just no communication, and the people who are trying to extend their stay aren't hearing back. So from what I know, and I'm sure there's people falling through the cracks. So if you know of anybody, like, reach out and we'll figure out what to do. My email is steff8@gmail.com. Email me. Someone posted that they had family members not knowing what to do. I said, send me an email. We can make something happen. Like, we will figure it out. We just need to know who needs help. And that's, some people are kind of connected into these volunteer groups. Thank the Lord for these volunteer groups. And so we kind of know what's going on with them. And then others, it's just like, this person here, this person here, this person here. There's lots of little crises going on all over the place. So that's the situation. The people, again, are stepping in to help the people. Now, here's the real issue, and what I want to talk about as far as bleeding into the situation in California. When this storm hit, and this is so important, guys. This is what I really want you to understand from a preparedness-minded perspective. Now, are your preps useful if they flooded or if they just got burned up? No, obviously. We don't not prep, because that could happen. But it could happen. We can be brought down to nothing at any moment, at any time, and have to rely on someone else to help us, right? But people can't help us if they also are brought down or don't have supplies and means and a way to help. The reason I've been able to help is because my home wasn't destroyed, and I had everything we needed to keep our family running and out of the grocery store and fueled up and have water and grow the food, so I could go out into the community and help. That's the goal. That's why we prepare. And again, that's like biblical principle. So this idea that preparedness is hoarding and it's selfish, it's actually not. It's not. And I can tell you, the people that do prepare, they don't just sit in their house and shut the door. Now, if there was a crisis and you needed to stay out of the way for a little while, I always tell you, be prepared to shut your door and take a deep breath and evaluate the situation before you run out. We need to know what we're dealing with. But it's often portrayed that preparedness is about hoarding and about selfishness, and it's not, because the people who are prepared are the ones that can evaluate the situation, who understand what's going on, and then can go out and help, because they have their home they're taken care of. Their home is secure and taken care of. They're not living in a crisis situation. The people that are living in a crisis situation cannot go help other people. If they are in a situation where they are desperately trying to find food, and I'm going to talk about this, and water, that's their whole day, is surviving, trying to find food and water. So when this storm hit, and this is how it connects to California, and the important part I want to share with you guys. When this storm hit, and there was no cell, no water, no power, roads closed, no Wi-Fi, people didn't know what was going on, right? That was the situation. And then it got to where people started to be able to cross the roads again as the water went down. And the grocery store worked, our local grocery store. It took them 4 or 5 days, like post-emergency. So not 4 or 5 days since the storm. It took them 4 or 5 days after, like, things stabilized a little bit, to even open the doors to allow people in, because they will not just sell you things. You know, we're not in the days where you can show up with some cash to the local general store and they'll take it and put it on a piece of paper or give you an IOU. You know, that's how it was back in the day. They had to have their computer systems up and running. So food was spoiling, food was going bad, it was not going to the people for 4 days. That food just rotted and all had to be cleaned out and thrown away because they couldn't get their computer systems online to monitor and track like what you bought when you went in the store and paid cash. That's why the grocery stores weren't open. They should have just opened the doors and let people go in and take whatever they wanted. But that is not the system we live in. We live in a very broken system, which is a whole nother topic. So I went out there one day when they did finally open up. And I wanted to evaluate the situation for one, and I wanted to grab a few supplies. Because at that time, I told my children, this could be a month or more of lines and not being able to get resources. And I'll explain why, and I'll explain why that wasn't the case. Because it's important to know that, because this California thing adds into this. When I went up there, I was in line with a military man, and a Chinook flew over the top of us. They were dropping supplies at the local early college high school for the shelter that was over there. And I was asking him, you know, what do you think the timeline is on this? He was saying, you know, this could be months of people waiting in line and these systems being broken. The warehouse for our grocery store went under. The roads were out. You know, we just didn't know if we were going to be able to get resources. Where were we going to get resources and all of those things? So that day, it took 4 hours to get into the store. They were only letting 10 people in at a time. You had to have cash. Most people did not have a lot of cash. They had like $10. So they waited 4 hours to get $10 worth of food out of the grocery store. I went in for some unnecessary things. I would have never gone in and taken anything like bread or anything that people needed. I got kombucha and ridiculous things. I actually went in because I needed special dog food because my dog was alive but sick at the time. So that's what the grocery stores were like. Now, the reason they didn't stay in a crisis situation and we had resources quickly after that is because of you guys. The people around the United States, churches, organizations started getting tons of resources and flooding the area with them. And so people didn't have to go to the grocery store because the distribution centers had free food and water and everything people needed. Animal feed, we still do. It's amazing. So that eliminated having to go to the grocery store, and that is how people were being fed and cared for. That is what kept us from being in a super, super critical situation. Because if those resources did not come in, I will tell you the amount of people who would have been in a dire, dire situation due to water and food was astronomical. Okay, and so that is the part that I think is super important to understand. Had outside resources not come in the way they did, this situation would have been so much more critical. Now, they did come in, and that's great. But what happens, and I was explaining this to my children, like what happens if there was an emergency in Florida and New York and North Carolina at the same time? Those resources would not be there, friends. That rescue crew that came in from all of you guys donating and doing so much would not have been there, and it would have been way more dire. So keep that in mind. So when these fires hit in California, and obviously people got real political with it, and all the, theories are out and rolling around, and most of them probably true because, we know that there's an agenda at play here with a lot of this stuff. But the problem, the first thing I thought, and this is a very selfish thought, so just kind of airing my own bad baggage, but I thought, this is going to hurt North Carolina and the resources we have coming in to fix our situation. And so we've got all these people on vouchers, all these people still in a homeless situation. And now we're not going to have people who are supporting us as much because California is going to need support. And we want California people to have support. Those fires, It's wild what's happening over there. The number of homes lost and the number of people displaced is astronomical, and they're going to have the same problem we have here. Now they have more money than a lot of the people in this area have, but I mean, what do you do when you've got so many people that are instantly overnight homeless? It creates astronomical problems. There's farms, guys. Keep in mind, California, it's where the food comes from in this country. So that's going to be a mess. The food costs are going to go up. And it's going to go up because the supply and demand. The supply is going to drastically drop, which is going to raise the food prices, which causes a whole lot of other issues. So it cascades. And so when that happened, and so there's a lot of people on the internet and kind of freaking out in this area, scrolling through some TikToks and some things, and just people kind of losing it over here. And I get it. It created fear. It put fear that the people and the help we need here is going to go away now because we have this other crisis. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as we move towards 2030. I mean, what day are we on? We're on like day 10 of 2025, and look at everything that's happened. As these things continue to occur, and they occur closer together and closer together, it creates a situation where you're on your own, because the outside help is going to dwindle, because now you're going to have churches and organizations and funds, all these emergency organizations here, they need to go to California now. And that doesn't mean they're just going to up and abandon us overnight, but that does mean they're going to have to take their resources and take their people and divide them up somehow to go help people in California, you know? And the closer, being on the two opposite sides of the United States helps, but as we start to have more situations that occur closer and closer together, it just makes it harder and harder and harder to get resources and help, which is where we need to be prepared to take care of ourselves in emergency situations, and realize that the resources can shut down. We live in a very delicate situation. We saw it here, but being just one small region allowed it to be okay. You expand that to multiple regions, and this system can crumble very, very quickly, which seems to be the plan and seems to be what's in motion, which we've always said, you got to burn it down to build it back, right? Literally, in the case of California. And so my final topic I want to talk about is there was funds announced coming to this area. And if you looked at where they were going, I shared this on my Instagram stories. It was like 1.6 billion to the state of North Carolina, and then so many dollars, I don't remember, going to Asheville specifically. And people are like, well, where does it go to help the people? What does that go to help? What it goes is to help from the government side. So rebuilding roads, hopefully, and cleaning up, hopefully, because those things are not happening. If they're happening from volunteers or like individual cities like Lake Lure, who are trying to get their cities cleaned up as fast as possible so they don't kill their tourist industry and they get money coming back in. It's all been more independent to local governments or to local people. So the money will go towards that, but here's where the money really goes. When you've got a situation, let's say your house is no longer there, or it's completely gutted, FEMA will offer you money to fix it up or rebuild, but the money they're offering is not, it's a joke. It's not enough. The max they can offer, just so you know, is $45,500, I think. I don't know anybody who got that or anywhere close to that. So the numbers I've been hearing are like 10,000. I know someone got 11,300. I know one who got 32,000, but their home was still there and was fixable, but 32,000 won't fix it. And they actually weren't in a flood zone. And I think that's why they got the most money. It's just the mountain kind of crumbled into their home, which is a little bit different situation. The ones on the water, those are the ones getting offered the least amount to fix or rebuild, and they're the ones being offered buyouts. So FEMA will go in and pay you the value of your property before the storm, and buy the property. So if they have the money to do that, the question has always been, why don't they just give them the money to rebuild so they can, even if it's 7 feet high, why not just give them that money and let them rebuild where they're at, stay where they're at. It helps with the housing situation. It helps with people wanting to be where they're at. It's the people's money, guys. Never forget that. Like, they are robbing you and I of our tax dollars to do what they will with it, and I will them to give it to the people to help them rebuild their house, but that's not happening. So they'll give them a little bit of money if they want to stay, or they'll buy them out. Now, when they buy them out, from my understanding, and I may not, I'm not an expert in this, from my understanding is that then FEMA sells that property back to the state of North Carolina at 75% of what they paid. So the $1.6 billion that North Carolina is getting, a lot of it is going to go to buy all that land that FEMA is acquiring right now. So please keep that in mind. This originally was like, yes, we're getting money. They're getting money to take the land. Hopefully they're also going to clean up some roads in the process. I mean, please clean up some stuff. If you saw when I drive, it's getting cleaned up by locals. There's one road I drive on. There's got to be 300 massive trees down in this river area. It looks like a disaster. It's terrible for the ecosystem. You can't just have all those trees like bottlenecking in waterway systems. It causes problems to other waterway systems. It causes erosion in areas there shouldn't be erosion. The stuff should be being cleaned up and cleaned up fast so that it doesn't cause further problems, and it's not. So that's what's happening. That's where I believe all that money is going to go, is to buy the land. They just got a big fat paycheck to go get all the land they need. And how convenient the timing of it, that for how many months are we in? This happened on September 26th or 27th, and we are in January 9th. For that amount of time, there's been no money and nothing happening. So it puts people in a desperate situation where they're cold, they're worn out, they don't have options. It makes it easier to take advantage of people. You wait until people are tired and worn out and vulnerable, and then they're more willing to take a bad deal. Also, never forget, like, most of these people still had mortgages and things, so it's not like they're getting a big paycheck and they get to walk away with all this money and start their lives over. They walk away in many cases with nothing, because they still have to pay their taxes. It was announced just this week that taxes are still due, and there's no special thing you can fill out because of an emergency. Obviously, there's ways you can extend your taxes and things like that, but they didn't put any special parameters in place to help people in this situation. They didn't put a hold, they didn't put a timeout. I mean, we're still in the thick of people living in cars and tents and hotels and being homeless, and they want you to pay taxes on your property that doesn't exist anymore. So these buyouts don't create a better situation. They don't put money into the economy. They don't help the job market. They make our housing situation worse. They make our housing situation more expensive just due to simple supply and demand, because we've got a huge issue there, and it's just escalating and making the problems worse while they get to take all of the land. So there's my update for today. Get your homes in order, grow some food, whether it's with a harvest wall, a tower, sprouting. I've got microgreens going, I've got sprouts going, we've got mushrooms. These are easy things you can do in a small space. Stock up on the things that you need to take care of your home so that you can be one of the people that's out there helping and have your home in order as the world continues to change. Because I think we're in for an interesting 5 years, friends. We should not be surprised as we see the world moving into more of a one world order, and some of the things we've been talking about for years coming to play. We're watching them unfold in front of our eyes. I think we're watching biblical prophecy unfold in front of our eyes. And we can have hope in that, because it is all for a plan, a greater plan. And so my final thoughts, don't get bogged down in the fear of what's happening. Don't get bogged down in the sadness. It is sad. It's emotional. I was watching those fires. And I won't lie, it's like super triggering because I just witnessed people having such great traumatic loss. And I can see, I'm closer to that pain of those people that are experiencing that in California because we just witnessed it here. So it is a little bit triggering. It's sad, but God's in control and there's a plan at play here. And even though I think we're going to have years where things get really intense, so be prepared for those. God is still greater. Personally believe it's all part of a greater plan. God is in control and the end result will be amazing. But for a time, be prepared. Get your homes in order and I will see you on the next video.